Okay, here we are. It's Happy New Year's, everyone. And, well, my New Year's isn't starting off so happy. Someone stole my debit card information and used it fraudulently to empty out the PayPal account that pays all the bills for First Amendment Radio. Whoopee, that started the day before yesterday. And, yeah. After they tried to make like 6 big transactions that had more money that was in the account, they shut down my account. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to recover that money or not, but that's a bad way to end the year. So hopefully it will be a much better new year. And anyway, welcome to the Prophecy Reformation. This first hour, good to see Brother John and WW in the chat room this morning, and anyone else who's listening, welcome. We're just a conversation is what I'd like to have, but I wish it was more two-way. And in the second hour, as promised, and I started 2 weeks ago because last week was Christmas Day, and probably the same 2 people that are in the chat room right now maybe would have been in there, because I know WW probably doesn't have any family or children or a Christmas tree. Am I right, WW? But I don't know about Brother John. You may have young children and do all the gift-giving stuff, and I would not begrudge anybody of all of that. Wow, there's closed captioning. Oh, yeah, there is. Look at that. Live closed captioning. That's on the outgoing stream. Yeah, well, we're continually trying to make improvements here and, to make First Amendment Radio more, listenable and watchable if you're watching on the video streams. But it's always got to be listenable because it is radio, and there are usually more people, or at least as many people listening on radio, on the audio stream, as there are on video. So it will always be listenable, and I think that's a good idea because I read somewhere that faith comes by hearing, and it doesn't come by sight. You think about Jesus doing all those miracles on the ground, and all of the people who, regardless of what they saw with their eyes, still couldn't believe. Yeah, they tried to attribute the miracles to Beelzebub or Satan. Yeah. So we know that faith doesn't come by seeing or by sight, but it comes by hearing, and that by the Word of God. And that's our mission here at First Amendment Radio. And of course, with the Prophecy Reformation, as with the Protestant Reformation, just trying to get back to, from what has become deformed, trying to reform it to what it should be. That's the object. Last week we talked about preterism, and preterism is kind of a no-brainer, but there's some people just cannot see around it. And despite all the evidence, they make up their own counter-evidence. And so we discussed that last week. I thought maybe this week we'll talk about one of the other main beliefs out there. And there are three main beliefs, especially if you're in the mainstream and you believe in the dispensational futurist pre-tribulation rapture redefined to be a third resurrection that happens 7 or 3.5 years before Christ returns. And I'm kind of confused if the resurrection of the saints is before he returns. Is there a resurrection when he returns? So is there 1, 2, or 3 resurrections? Well, I read the Bible. Jesus outlined 2 resurrections. And if there's any garble, it has to be on your end. Because when I look at the recordings, WW, it's crystal clear. And our sound is just about perfect, unless I'm not hearing something. Let me mute my mic and listen to the output for a second, just to make sure. We do not observe the Pope's unholy days. Brother John says, yeah, Mass. I don't mind people celebrating the birth of Christ, because I thought, if I was going to celebrate my own birthday, I would be so happy to be alive that I would give gifts to everyone else. Okay? But, I give all year long, and I do give gifts occasionally to people that I love or that are around me and I have to do with. And every day I give my labor, because for most of the labor I do, if I were to say what I get returned from the labor that I do for First Amendment Radio and Prophecy Reformation, I would probably get about 50 cents an hour if I, if I counted all the hours I spend laboring on these things and the money I spend doing that. And that's why it's kind of a big hit when I lose $600 out of the PayPal account through fraud. And I'm likely not going to get it back if what I've heard so far is an indication from PayPal on that account. I mean, what the heck? Why should they suffer the loss because someone stole the debit card information somewhere and then ran it as a credit card somewhere, I don't know where, to buy what, I don't know. Yeah. Where was everyone last week? We weren't here last week. I did a rerun last week. Just because I didn't feel like going on the air more than anything else. And I figured that who would show up anyway? Probably the same two people that are in the chat room right now and who are listening. But not everyone comes into the chat room. That would make me feel better if they all did. We're at the Rumble chat room. And I guess, the people that are listening on radio, on the radio stream, which there are a few listening there right now, they probably, because most of them are on we have a 24 kilobit and a 96 kilobit audio stream, so most of them are in the 24 kilobit, which sounds garbled all the time to me, speaking to WW's thing there. And the 64 or the 96 kilobit stream sounds really great, but today in bandwidth, 96 kilobits is nothing anymore. But the people listening to the 24-bit stream, they probably have low bandwidth. And so that's why we still have it for them, for people out in the boonies and just don't have a lot. Maybe they're on satellite internet or something because they're way out in the boonies somewhere. And so, and they have to pay for all their bandwidth or whatever. So we provide that for people. And you can get that 24 kilobit on the Prophecy Reality what do you call that? News app on Android, right? Because that's only available on Android now. But everyone else listening on the Mobi page gets the 96-bit stream. And I ought to put the 24-bit stream on there. That's something I will have to do. So all you people listening on 24-bit, I'm going to say by the end of this month, I'm going to have the 24 kilobit stream on the Mobi page too, because I don't know how long we'll have the Prophecy Reality News app. It's paid for another year right now, so it should be up there for another year. But we may be banned from the Google store. That's why I developed the Mobi page, because you don't have to go to an iStore or a Google store or any of those stores to get it, even though it's free and you don't have to pay for it. But you can just go to First Amendment Radio. Well, it's right there on the screen if you can see it, but it's FirstAmendmentRadio.net /Mobi. So I'll be listening on the Prophecy Reality News app. You might want to check that out. You can even get there through some of the you can navigate there from the Prophecy Reality News app too. Okay, Well, Brother John says everything is great. So what would you guys like to talk about in this hour? We're just talking about anything. I do have to, give a shout out to, let's see, Wendy from Wellington, Florida. Has been sending me beautiful cards and notes, and I do appreciate that, and a generous contribution every month. And that comes in the mail, so that didn't get lost in the PayPal account. Also, let's see, while I'm doing this, Michael from Penny Farms, Florida, every month, faithfully giving by check. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, and we pray for blessings upon you and your household. And let's see, and there are others. Oh, Carrie from, I forget exactly where Carrie's from, but let's see, she has, I forget what her moniker online is too right now, because my brain is having a teenage moment. And you know why I say teenage? Because they usually say senior moments, but I've been around a lot of teenagers. All my grandchildren are teenagers or young adults now. And my youngest daughter will be 24 this month. Wow, where did that time go? Yeah. So the teenagers, anyway, they still have teenage moments, even in their early 20s. Yeah. So Carrie, and I'm going to have to put a list up of all the people I want to give a special thanks to for supporting First Amendment Radio faithfully. You know who you are, even if I don't mention your name right now. I'm just not good at lists and getting things like that done. And I know that the people that give to First Amendment Radio aren't really giving to me, but they're sowing into God's kingdom. And they will have their reward in eternity, and perhaps some reward now, because there is a great reward in this life for following Christ and walking on the repentance road, the narrow way that leads to life. The greatest reward is the greatest thing that can be obtained in this life, can only be obtained that way. Yeah, well, it's not really PayPal's fault that somebody stole my information somewhere. I don't know where, but it had to be from one of the vendors that I, purchased, stuff from over the last year or so, or recently. But so I had to change all that information, and I don't know whether PayPal is going to give me the money back or not, but they should probably, as a cost of doing business, eat most of that fraud themselves. I mean, after all, they're making billions, and I'm surviving here on, below official poverty line for Americans in the USA. That's how I survive. I'm way below the poverty line. But fortunately, God, I have a place to live, and that's paid for. All I have to do is pay the rent to the state every year. And that goes up every year, too. Yeah. I'd like to see property taxes done away with. I think that they're egregious, because one is that you never are done paying the sales tax on your property, and if they want to collect a sales tax, it would take 10 years, because the sales tax rate in California is about 10% on everything you buy. So it would take 10 years at 1% to pay off the property, but then they keep taxing you on that, and then they want to tax you on unrealized gain. Everybody loves that, right? Because the value of the property goes up, and they want to tax you on it. So it's unrealized gain too. So it's just, and plus you don't own your property. There is no life, liberty, and property anymore, because you can lose your property if you become poor, or I have to work. I mean, I think the biggest bill I have every month, every year, after electricity, but I pay with that by solar panels. But that only supplements my electric bill here in California, which is the highest in the nation, because of our Jesuit governor Nuisance, who him and his friends are getting rich, but hey, we got to pay. That's right. And plus, he's trying to kill oil and diesel natural gas, everything. He wants everything electric. Where are we going to get this electric? Does it like appear out of nowhere? No, it has to be created with oil, diesel, and natural gas. So it's just a trade-off, except you lose a lot in the generation of electricity. So actually it costs more to run electric vehicles and electric lawnmowers and electric everything else because of all the loss from creating electricity and getting it to your battery where you have to wait for it to charge for too much time. So hopefully California will soon go the way of the nation, and Governor Newsom and the whole dynasty, California or West Coast dynasty really, will go out the window, we hope, someday, or the state will be broken up into 2 Californias or 6 Californias. I don't go, just break it up. I live in the red, what they call the red part, okay, from the last election, the Republican part. I'm in one of the red areas of California, and we are governed, we are ruled over, dictated to by the blue areas, which are very small, yeah, or much more concentrated. See, there's got to be something better than PayPal. Yeah, there's cash, gold, and silver, but you know, I have to pay for a lot of my services online, so I don't mind having PayPal or some kind of electric because I'm doing this over the internet, which you're enjoying right now. So, and fortunately, as a rule, I don't keep, if it gets up to $1,000, I'll take the money out and spend it on something else to pay stuff, because, you know, I deserve something. You know, I could buy some food with it or pay this or that bill with it. So, yeah, let's see. EVs get 5 miles per gallon if you measure the diesel generator charging them. Yeah, probably. So it's like I said, hopefully California will go the way up. But the cheating in California, I think, is too great for the general elections for the governor. Yeah, can't seem to get rid of this guy, because I really can't believe that there's that many stupid people in California. And I've said this before. Californians proved it by the ballot initiatives we had. One on gay marriage, when it was put to the vote in California, gay marriage lost. Yeah, it lost. Abortion too. I remember that was way back in the 70s. So these things did not win by public, but then the Supreme Court overturned us all, and that was that liberal Supreme Court, and gave us gay marriage and abortion, both in America. And of course, gay marriage is not a real thing. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Property taxes were once what gave you the right to vote, or so they said. What? No. Yeah. Oh, maybe. Yeah. I guess I can see that, where people might say that, because you had to be a property owner at once to vote. Yeah. Because you had a stake in the nation. And then they kept breaking that down to where everybody gets to vote now, even illegal aliens in California. Yeah. Governor Newsom, he came out the week before the election or a month before the election. He says, nobody can ask for ID anywhere, any polling place in California for people to vote. Oh, I wonder why he would say that. That kind of sounds like he wants illegal aliens to vote for him. In other words, he wants it to be legal to cheat in California. Yeah. Better to use a credit card for vendors at all. Yeah. A credit card. Why I can't get a credit card? Because I don't use a socialist security number, because I'm not a socialist. And that, of course, it means at my ripe old age of 70 plus, I don't collect Social Security either or anything from the government. So, yeah, I get nothing from them, and I give as little as possible to them, though they still get my money through whatever way they can. I pay a lot of taxes like everyone else. I just don't pay the unlawful income tax because the Constitution says there shall be no direct taxes. And I got to go out because I heard a tone there. Let's see. I'll be back in a few minutes. Secrets of the Rapture. Is there a 500-year-old conspiracy? A propaganda machine so pervasive and entrenched, yet so elusive that the entire world could be taken in by it, working in plain sight, but unseen by the world for what it truly is? If prophecy is God-given history in advance, why does the prophecy that has conquered the age also exclude nearly 2,000 years of history? What is it that they are afraid that the light of history will reveal? To understand our place in time and prophecy, we must look in history for an interpretation, that which stands the test of time, that which agrees with the Word of God, and history has proven to be true. When cunning fables and fearful speculations are removed from our sight, then we may clearly see what is truly expressed in Bible prophecy, both that which has been fulfilled and that which has yet to come. God's express word is the sword that must be wielded to remove the scales from the eyes and dispel the darkness of deceitful conjecture. Secrets of the Rapture was written to expose that which the spirit of the age has conjured out of the darkness to blind the eyes of the church in the world today. Secrets of the Rapture, Deconstructing Pre-Tribulation Dispensational Futurism by yours truly, Nicholas Arthur, is now available at lulu.com and Amazon. Secrets of the Rapture.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
All right, we're back. Everything's working right. All right, let's checking out the chat room. Let's see. John says, every state we've lived in for the past 28 years started out red and ended up blue. Yeah, it's kind of like us. We start out red, and then you choke off our oxygen, and we start to turn blue. And that's how it is for every liberal's brain. When you choke the truth off, they start to turn blue, I guess. Yeah, no adults allowed in voting machine results. Lightning strikes. Great. Business card using your EIN. Yeah. Don't know what that means, but I do know what an EIN is because, of course, we have one of those for the banking we do for First Amendment Radio. Yeah, and it is a business card using the EIN, the one that got hacked on PayPal. Yeah, or PayPal. It wasn't on PayPal. It's a MasterCard, but it's a PayPal MasterCard. Let's see, what else? Every state, yep. And, yeah, better to use vendors at, credit card. Like I said, I can't have one of those. Can't qualify for a credit card. If you want to send me one, I'll use it. We take gift cards too. Yeah, because we can always pay bills with those. Wow. Eggs are $19 a dozen in California? Where at? Oh, my chickens, yeah. They keep laying eggs every day. So I'm immune to the price of eggs. I did buy, about a month ago, I bought some eggs because we ran out. My chickens stopped laying for a while. And I stocked them up in a refrigerator that I have in my garage. So, because they lay way more than we can eat, but yeah. So one thing we don't have a shortage of here is eggs on the ranch. Okay, I thought I'd talk about, last week we talked about preterism, so we should talk about another fallacy. There are three very popular methods of prophecy interpretation that are prominent today. And the first one, of course, is dispensational futurism. And the next one is amillennialism. And the third one is dispensationalism. That's all the choices you have that they're offering today. They don't offer, none of them offer historicism. They just offhandedly cast it off as, as not even viable. And they say some cursory things about it that don't even fit. Because I've read all their books. Yeah. The futurists, the dispensationalists, the amillennialists, and the preterists. I've read them all. Yeah, I have them in my library, so I know them well. And if, you have the best, Gentry, Storms, Riddle Barger, the best proponents of these other theses. And if they can't convince me, well, no one can, because they have to convince me against the Word of God. But all of these have something in common. And I haven't found anyone that's honest enough to admit this. So either they're delusional or they know but they don't want to admit that their theses, the several theses that we're speaking of, or four, if you want to count futurism and dispensationalism separately. And I guess you have to for someone like John MacArthur, who believes in futurism but not dispensationalism. So that's two. And then there's, of course, amillennialism. And then there's preterism. And amillennialism includes postmillennialism because the first amillennialists were postmillennials. And, for instance, Augustine, the great Augustine, Christian scholar of the 4th or 5th century, while he believed in grace and faith for salvation, so he got that right, the important thing right, He also fell for amillennialism because he saw Christianity overtaking the world as the postmillennials say it would. That the church would become dominant in the world and rule the world. And what happened? Voila, Constantine, rose up and the Roman Empire became Christian. So that was the first amillennialists, were postmillennialists. And then later on, after postmillennialism failed, obviously, then after that, so more recently, they came up with the division between postmillennialists and amillennialists. And so the amillennialist is the most popular in the Reformed churches today, except for like John MacArthur, who is a futurist but not a dispensationalist, because there's no such thing as a Reformed dispensationalist, unless he's not a dispensationalist anymore. So, see, I used to be a dispensationalist, and I didn't even know what dispensationalism was, but then I became Reformed in that, and then later on, I became a Reformed Christian too, because I had to put off a lot of things that were deformed that I learned from people in my past, and mistaken ideas, and just, out general stupidity. Yeah, I admit all of that. It's the only way you get away from it is by admitting it, repenting of it, whether you knowingly or not. Let's see. Brother John says, avoid coins that are not actual coins. You mean like bitcoins that are not actual coins? I agree. Although I wished I had bought 100 bitcoins in the first couple years. Yeah. So, yeah. I have some savings in silver coins. I'll admit that much. And I even have a couple of gold coins. But, so, I can eat when the economy fails. Will it fail? I don't know. I'm not going to prognosticate that way. Things look pretty unstable as they are. So I think it's a good idea. I know that the coins I bought back 20 to 25 years ago, I have kept their value while the dollar value of them has skyrocketed. What they'll buy has pretty much remained the same. Yeah. And so, yes, when the grid goes down, but will the grid go down? They don't want the grid to go down. They'll do everything they can, unless you're in some place like the Gaza Strip. Even there, you can get a phone connection. So, yeah. Anyway, back to the topic. What am I paying attention to the chat room for? Because it's right there in my face, I guess. Okay. So back to the topic. We're talking about amillennialism because we talked about preterism last week. So what all three of these have in common is that they rely totally on conjecture, which makes them totally speculative also. But they'd want to argue that my position is speculative too. Well, yeah, I speculate that when I read chapter 20 of the Revelation, that it means what it says by the plain, that is to be understood by the plain reading of the text. And their arguments go something like that. Well, the 1,000 years is not to be taken literally, but figurative. So I've researched, because I want to get my interpretation from the word, and I researched the word 1,000 in both the Greek and the English, okay? Because I use an English Bible, I speak English, that's my language, and then I use the Greek because that's the language from which my English Bible is translated, the Textus Receptus, okay? And so I use those two, and I look for the word 1,000, and I look up the word 1,000, and it appears, in two different ways in the Revelation. One is myrioi, or myrias, I forget which one, but pretty much the same word. And then there's kilioi, or kiliad, kilias. Okay, and one is literal. It means a literal 1,000 years. It's determinate. Yeah, determinate. Or so kilioi means 1,000 or 8,000, because it could have a prefix before it, 7,000, 8,000, 10,000. But if it's kilioi, and if it's more than 1,000, it will always have a prefix of a certain affinity, either 7 or 10 or whatever that affinity is, if it's not 1. But it never appears with a prefix of any certain affinity if it is singular. It will just say 1,000 or kilioi. Okay, but there's another interpretation, Greek word for 1,000 in the Revelation even. So they can't say, well, God didn't know when he wrote the Revelation that there was a word for an undeterminate number. And so in one place he uses that word for an undetermined number, myrioi, from which is a derivative we get the word myriad, which means an innumerable number. Yeah. And it is translated 10,000 times 10,000, or myrioi, or myriads and myriads in the Greek. Okay? So if God used the Greek word for a long period of undetermined time in one part of the Revelation, but then he used the determinate kilioi, meaning 1,000, in another part of the Revelation, but he meant it symbolically in both places, why did he not use the word that is symbolic, that he had and knew and used earlier in the Revelation, chapter 5, I believe it is? Did he forget about that word by the time he got to chapter 20? That he had a word for an undetermined or an unnumbered amount of time? Okay? No, he didn't. And not only that, he says it 6 times in chapter 20. And I believe that pretty much reinforces it. And that kills their whole idea that the 1,000 in chapter 20 is supposed to be taken symbolically, because the word is not taken symbolic anywhere else in the entire New Testament. Okay? But the symbolic word that has the root as word as our same word, myrid, okay, is used elsewhere in the New Testament and in the Revelation for an undetermined amount of time. It says, like it's where it says, if I speak 10,000 words in an unknown tongue, meaning a myriad amount of words, an unnumbered amount of words, but it's translated 10,000, but we understand that because it's a simile, it's a figure of speech that we use regularly. And when we read that, we know it just means an unnumbered, if it's 100 or 10,000, it doesn't matter. It's a myriad, an undetermined number, whether it's 100 or 1,000 in that case. And it's understandable, and it's easily understood by the plain reading, even of the English text, what manner the 1,000 in those cases are to be taken. Yeah. Okay, so that takes care of the word 1,000. And they have other things. Like they say that if we let's go to chapter 1 there, to chapter 20 of the Revelation and look at that. Let me bring up my eSword. Let me hide that. Oops. Oh, there it is. And I have to be able to see it too. There it is. Okay, so if we go to Revelation chapter 20, yes, that's there at the end of the book. And it says, I saw an angel come down from heaven, having a key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And they'll argue and say, the chain it's symbolic. Doesn't really have a chain. And he laid hold of the dragon and the devil and to Satan and bound him 1,000 years. Okay? You say, you don't believe it really. Well, you know what? When I read this, the chain is not symbolic. It's a simile. If I say, I've been chained down by my job for 20 years and I want to break loose, am I talking about, it's a simile. It means that I'm bound, that something is binding me. The chain is a representative of a means of binding. It doesn't have to be a literal chain, hammered out with, iron and steel and forged. But it's a simile, but it's not symbolic. The language that when the Revelation uses symbols, if the Revelation didn't give you the interpretation of the symbols, you would never guess what they are. Like when Jesus said that he was walking among 7 candlesticks. If he didn't tell us what the candlesticks represented, we would have no idea. Would we just be out here guessing whether he's the light of the world or stuff like that? We would just be guessing. But he stops and he says, the 7 candlesticks in this vision represent 7 churches that he's going to write letters to, or that he's going to, give John those epistles to, for him to write in the Revelation. So the candlestick is symbolic, but the chain is not symbolic. It is a simile. It is similar to. It is something said that's similar to what is meant. And it's easily understood. Whether Satan is bound by a physical chain. And you know what? God is pretty dramatic, I think. I mean, have you seen history? Have you read history? Have you lived a life? I mean, what about the drama we're going through right now? Life is dramatic. And, God is, man, he's into drama. What can we say? Okay, so I have this sneaking suspicion that there will be a chain. And when this happens on the earth, when John was watching it happen, that he watched it happen, that Satan was really bound. There was an angel, he came down from heaven. When he comes down from heaven, meaning that John must be on the earth. I don't know where else he would be down if heaven is up and the angel's coming down, okay? And he has a key to the bottomless pit. And they say it's not a real key and it's not a real... Well, that's their opinion. I have this sneaking suspicion, if we're able to see this like John saw it, as John being our representative person who sees what's happening in the future, okay, I believe in this case he may have really watched this take place. I believe that, that this angel, whether it's Christ or not, I don't know. Some people believe it is. Okay, that he is this messenger. He is the one. But it doesn't matter to me. I don't care whether it's Christ or one of his subordinates that do it. Having a key to the bottomless pit. And I think the bottomless pit has to be where as down as low as you can go to where there's no more bottom, which would be at the center of the earth. And I hear the center of the earth is pretty hot, though I've never been there. And it's only theoretical because I don't know anyone else who's been there. But the theory is that the center of the earth is very hot. And it seems like a viable theory since lava comes up out of the earth. And that hot stuff comes from somewhere. So it may be in the center of the earth. And that's where Satan is bound. And God can bind anyone anywhere he wants at any time he wants. He is God after all. He has the authority or the key. Okay? And a key, when I have a key, it gives me authority to open the locks or unlock or drive a car or whatever it is the key is for, to open a box or a safe or whatever. So a key, and will there be a key? Well, yeah, there may be a key. Yeah. But whatever, this bottomless pit is going to open up because someone has the key to it, whether the key is a word, like you speak words now to get into things. You say certain things, you use your voice, that's your key. So key doesn't have to be a literal physical key. So, it got me there. Oh, wow. Doesn't have to be a literal key, and it doesn't have to be a literal chain, but It's going to be something similar to that. It's going to be something that those things actually, literally represent. Whereas a word like a beast, is an animal. They represent governments. How do I know that? Because God has given us the interpretation of that symbol. If he hadn't, we would have no idea. And they go, well, it's not really a dragon and an old serpent. Well, how do we know that this dragon, this old serpent is the devil? It even says in the same text, which is the devil. So their argument that these things are symbolic or similes does not make the 1,000 years, the word kilioi, the evidence from the Revelation and the use of the words themselves tells us that they are be taken by the plain reading of the text. But they don't like the plain reading of the text. They think God is too dramatic, that God is not going to do this because they don't like it. And for Jesus to be on earth while there's sinful people on the earth too, it's unacceptable to them. God, we find that unacceptable. What you've written here, that's unacceptable to us. That's what the Amillennialists are saying. If we read this by the plain reading of the text, it's unacceptable, and therefore it's not right. If you believe that, there's something wrong with you. Yeah. And this is from people who are theologically reformed. That's what blows my mind, is they can't see that they're doing the exact same thing that the dispensationalists and the preterists are doing. They're just relying totally on speculation because they don't have one express word. Now, I have 6 express words in chapter 20 of the Revelation, and I have nothing else in the entire Scripture that conflicts it. They have a lot of things that they conjecture to overthrow the Revelation chapter 20. But those things that they use to overthrow, it just as easily harmonize with Revelation 20, because there is no contradiction. If it can be harmonized with something that is expressed, then you should go with that. That's kind of my rule. If the Bible expresses something and everything else can be harmonized with it, then that's the rule. You harmonize what is expressed in the Scripture. And it expressly says kilioi 6 times, which is never translated symbolically anywhere else in the entire New Testament. And you notice I'm not going to the Old Testament because the Old Testament wasn't written in Greek. So we have to go to the New Testament to understand the Greek text and how the words are used. Okay, let's see. Anybody got anything to say about what I'm talking about here? Let's see. Myriad, extreme, innumerable. The number of 10,000, an immense number, indefinitely. Yeah, that's the number we use to express an innumerable numbers, 10,000. And like I said, when in the context, it's easily understood that it doesn't mean literally 10,000, but it means an innumerable number. So even in our English context, by the reading, it should be understood as myriad, an undetermined number, just a large number. If I speak 10,000 words in an unknown tongue and have not love, so it doesn't matter whether it's only 100 word or 100,000 or 10,000. It's an innumerable number understood by the plain reading of the text. And that's what I say about Revelation 20. Read it by the plain understanding of the text. And it's inescapable that we are going to rule and reign with him for the last 1,000 years before the new heaven and new earth and the great white throne judgment, which happens at the end of the 1,000 years. Then we get the new heaven and new earth. So that there is an era without the influence of Satan on the nations and peoples of the earth, because the one guy said, well, it's only on the nations. But who makes up the nations? The people, the ethnos, the different ethnic families of the earth is represented by the nations. And if Satan is not going to deceive the nations, that means all of the people of all of the nations. It doesn't exclude the people because the nations are nothing without the people. That's another one of their arguments. Okay, well, I got my tones telling me that it's time for me to go. And next, we're going to continue our exposition of the Revelation, chapter by chapter, word by word, verse by verse. And we left off at chapter 2, verse 10. So we'll be picking up right around there. We'll probably step back a little bit, maybe to the beginning of that chapter. Okay, I'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.